Hello everyone. So welcome back to this channel, and in this channel what we are dealing with is coding, data science, and programming as a whole. And in this video we are going to learn programming basics, and we are going to focus on Python as a language. So before we kickstart this video, ensure you hit the subscription button because we are posting coding tutorials daily. So ensure you subscribe to this channel because that really means a lot to us. So I'm giving you a second to subscribe and then we continue. Okay, so let's get into this. So coding is basically about logic and the syntax and how you approach a particular problem. So we are going to write our first program, that one in Python. So we are going to print a string hello world, and we are going to use the function print hello world, and then with a string you enclose it within the double quotes to show that it is a string. So in this video we are going to cover all the basics that you need for you to kickstart your coding journey. So what you have there is now the output. As you can see, print hello world, you run the cell and you get the output printed or displayed hello world. So another way of doing this is by assigning a variable. You can have a variable and you name it my string, and then within it you store the value. So a variable is just like a box where you keep some value, an empty box, and then you keep a value there. So my string there is a variable, and the equal sign in programming means the assignment. So in my string we are assigning it the string hello world, and then in our next line we are printing the string. So when we print the variable, what we are supposed to get is the hello world way. So as you can see, that's how simple it is. So we are getting the same output but with different approach. That is now basically what programming deals with. So we are going now to a different thing, a variable as I defined it earlier. So here we are going to write some codes to describe really what the variables are. So let's have a variable, for example x and y. So let's say x equals to 2. So x is a variable there. We are assigning it a value of 2. So with Python, this varies from language to language. From different programming languages, it varies. So in this, so x equals to 2, Python understands that this is basically an integer. We don't have to specify that is the variable type. So when we say x equals 2, y equals 3, and we print x plus y, you can see we are getting the output 5. So that is the addition operator in Python. So let's go to our next. So you've learned the variable, you've learned data type, that is string, an integer, and now you know that Python understands you don't have to specify that a value is an integer or a string. Python automatically knows that. So you've known now the addition operator. So let's do now the statements in programming, or the control flow. So what is a statement? A statement now means that you are instructing a computer or a program to do something depending with the conditions given. You are controlling the flow of the program. So basically these are the if else statement, else if. And that is now what you are going to do. So let's define a problem that we are going to solve. So if n is odd, so we are going to have a variable n, and we are going to have some statements. So if n is odd, we are going to display the text weird. And if n is even, we are going to display if n is even and in the inclusive range. So at this point it is even and it is in the range, it is in some particular range. So let's say, sorry for that, so let's say so n is even and in the inclusive range of 2 to 5, we are going to display the text not weird. So this is the problem that we are going to use to fully understand what we mean by the control flow statement. So let's have now another line there. So n is even and in the inclusive range of, let's say, 2 to 20, we are going to print weird. So let's have another statement. So we are going to solve this in 3 different approaches so you understand the logic behind it. So if n is even and if n is even and greater than, if n is even and greater than 20, if n is even and greater than 20, we are going to print not weird. So that is the problem that we are going to solve now. Let's write a code that will solve that particular problem now. So let's say so this is our solution 1, the first solution that we have. The first approach. We are going to have 3 approaches to solve this, or at least 2. So let's have our variable n. So n, where are we getting the value n? The value n, we are getting it from the user. That is the person using the program. That is the person that is going to enter the value. So as I said earlier, that in this course we are covering all the basics. So now this is now getting the user, getting the value from the user. We use integer input, enter value, n. That's where we are getting the value. So first line, if n is even, that is if n modulus 2, the percentage sign there is the modulo operator, and the double equal sign now is the comparison operator. So if n is even, and then within that block we are going to have some statement. It is even and if it is in range. So the indentation there means that the if n in range 2 to 6 will execute after confirming that n is even. So n is even and n is in the range of 2 to 5. We are going to print not weird. So that is now the first set. We have solved the first set. So we are going to the next statement there. else if. So we are using elif statement in Python. Else if n in range two to 20. So we should have else if else if n in range 6 to 20, we are going to print weird. Else, if all the conditions are not satisfied, so the last line, else if the value n is greater than 20, we are going to print not weird. That is the last line of the code. So now this is now the control statements that else let's print weird. So I hope you are understanding the flow, how the code really flows well. So we are going to execute, we are going to run that cell. Now we are going to, let's enter the value n, let's say 23. You can see we have the output. If we run the cell again and enter different value, so that was our first solution. So we are going to write the second solution that works exactly the same but in a very different approach, and maybe the simplest method to solve that. As we said, programming is all about the approach, how your logic, it is really different. So let's have that text over there so you remember this. So that now that is the comment. I didn't mention what we mean by a comment earlier. So a comment is a line that is not executed when running a program. So that's how we write a comment. You make sure you have the hash symbol there. So in this approach now, let's get the value n again from the user, as we did earlier in our first solution. After getting the value n, let's print. So this is now a one-liner code. We are just trying to make it really simple. You said Python is really simple to understand. As much as you have the creativity needed, it's really easy. So let's write all the statement that we had previously in a single line now. So print not weird if not. So not there is the negation. If not n modulus 2, I hope you are following this and you are enjoying this. So print not weird if not n modulus 2, and we have the parenthesis n in range. So it is going to print not weird if not n modulus 2, meaning if n is not even and in range 2 to 6, or the logical operator there, or n. Yeah, I know you understand. Or there means either n in range 2 to 6 or n is greater than 20. else if all those statements are not satisfied, we are going to print weird, and you can see we are getting the same output as the one we were getting in our previous code. So now this is the creativity that I meant when I said now it depends with your own approach. Programming basically depends with your own approach. So you can see this one also works the same just as the previous one. When you enter value 4, we get weird. So I hope you got that. I hope you got that and you mastered how the statement works. So let's execute the self one more time. So we are going to write our next set of our next topic, that is the loops. So let's add a text there. Let's do arithmetic operators first before we go to loops. So arithmetic operators are like the division, addition, multiplication, subtraction, and exponential. That is we are raising it to power something. So now in this next cell, now we are going to require two inputs from the user, so we can get them all at the same time by having the two variables a, b. So a comma b means a is a variable and b is also a variable, and we are getting them all from the user. So ab is equals to integer input. We have comma there, so the first one is the value of a, and the second one now will be the value of b. I hope you're understanding it. So we are going to want to print all of them. So let's communicate there with the user. We direct the user, enter first value. So we want to perform all the arithmetic operators in a single line. So print first a plus b, that is the addition operator, and then a minus b. A multiplied by b, and then let's have the last one there. So the SEP equals to backslash n there means we are going to write them after addition, subtraction, multiplication. We have the values. We are going to next line. That's what it means. So we had the three values, 3 and 6. So let's have the space. Let's add another one there, a squared. So a raised power 2, we are going to have it as double asterisk. So that double asterisk means squared or raised power something. I'm trying to explain all the basic concepts just in a single line, so that we were supposed to do this in 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes we are supposed to have all the basics you need. So let's run. So let's have our first value, enter the second value as 10. So as you can see, we have the values a plus b 33, a minus b 13, a times b to 30, and then 23 squared there, 529. So let's go now to our next thing. That was all about arithmetic operators. So let's solve also another problem to our, that is, we are going to print square of the first 20 numbers. So this is where we are going to introduce the loops now, using these problems after. If you can print the square of the first 20 numbers now, you will understand loops really well. So let's try to do it in a single line. Let's try to approach it in a very creative manner. Okay, this one, well, let's just go the normal way so that you can really understand it well. So for, we are going to use a for loop, and then we'll understand while loop. So for I in range, so I here is the iterative variable. You don't have to define it anywhere. So for I in range n, and then we have a code block there. If n so that don't work. So let's do it like for I in range 1 to 21, that is I ranges between 1 to 20, print I squared. So this one looks really simple. So for I in range 1 to 21, print I squared. So if we execute the cell, you see now we have the square of the first 20 values, because 20 squared is 400, 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. So that was all about for loops in Python. I now you understand now how we are looping the first, we are iterating over the first 20 values, and we are going to square each and every one of them. So now let's check the while loop now. So we started with defining a variable, printing a string, statements, loops, for loop. We are now in while loop. So we are basically covering all the basics in Python programming. So let's solve some problem using a while loop now. So while loop means it is going to perform a particular operation while some condition, while a specific condition is satisfied. That is, so let's define a loop first. Loops are control structures that iterate over a range to perform a certain task. That is, so let's initialize a value I equals to 0. So we already have the value I, we've initialized it. So while I is less than 5, so we are going to perform an operation as much as I is less than 5 and of course our I is 0, meaning the condition is satisfied. So this operation is only going to work if I is less than 5. So while I is less than 5, print I, and then I plus equals 1. You know, as much as I is less than 5, we are going to add a value 1 on it until I equals 5. So we are going to add 1 after every sequence. If I is 4, we are going to print I and then we are adding 1 on it. So 4 plus 1 is 5. So let's have I to be 0. Let's have I to be a different value, like I equals 2. So we have 2 and then we add 1, then we add 1 until now I equals 5. So if we have I as 0, so we are going to print I, which is 0, then we add 1 until the value of I is equals to 5. Now that is now what we mean by a while loop. I hope you understand that. So let's now do another thing. Let's require an input value n from the user, and then now we iterate over the value n. So for I in range n, we are getting the value n from this, and then we want to loop through it. So for I in range n, print I squared. So that is now our last example on for loop, of course, getting the input from the user. So if the user enters 9, we are printing, we are squaring the values that are within that range n. So let's now handle functions in Python. So function is a set of code blocks that perform a specific task. So to define a function, we are using the keyword define, def, that is for define, and then followed by the function name. Let's call it my function. And then the colon there means a set of code blocks. So what the function is going to do? So our function is going to print a string. Let's say this is my first function code. So the parenthesis after having the function name there means the parameters. So like in this case we are taking an empty parameters. We are taking empty argument, that is, and then our function is printing a string, my first function code. So we must invoke the function. So to invoke the function, you just have the function name and the parenthesis. So let's have a call. So if we run the cell now, we can see we have my first function called. So function only operates after calling it. You can have the function, but it will never get to the output without calling it. So let's comment here defining a function. So let's run it again. You can see we have the same output. So let's define another function, that is a function that adds two numbers. So define function name adds two numbers. It takes two parameters, x and y. So the first one was taking an empty parameters, but this one now is taking two parameters, that is x and y values. So we can define a variable within the parameter. So you are defining a variable, you are assigning a variable value within the parentheses, and then you print x plus y. So it will print 40 plus 10 in this case. So the main reason why we didn't get any output there is because we didn't invoke the function. So to invoke the function, you have the function name followed by the parameters, and if we run it now, we should get the addition of the two numbers. So that is now we had the parameters defined within the cell, but it is not a must that we give the parameters a value within the parentheses or within the function body. We can just call a function so let's say subtract. Let's have another function that subtracts two numbers, and then within it you have the values x and y. So in this case we are not assigning them any value, and then we are going to print x minus y. And then we call the function. So when we are calling the function, that's when we pass in the value. So we are calling the function by value. So let's have the function, we call the function, and within the function we pass in the values. That is, let's say the first value that we have there represents x, and the second one represents y. So if we run the cell, we should get three outputs. First one printing a string, second one adding, and the last one subtracting the values of x and y. So I hope you understand now what functions mean. So in our next video we'll be talking about advanced Python programming. We'll be talking about classes, inheritance, polymorphism. So we'll be able to do all those in our next video. So make sure you subscribe and you like our videos and you share. So as you can see, we really need a lot of subscribers in this video. We are trying to be now the YouTube people now. So make sure you subscribe to us, you like and you share our video so that we continue making such videos. So thank you. Have a nice coding. So subscribe for our next video. Thank you.